Hi, I'm Jillian. Welcome to a brand new episode of the Blogger Genius podcast. This has been a very interesting time. Google has been rolling out updates, and many bloggers, niche bloggers who monetize via ads and affiliates have gotten hit. I've been on calls this week with many of you, and one blogger said, Jillian, you have been right. It is time that we have multiple income streams, and I'm now ready to sell digital products. If this is you, get on a free 20-minute call with me where I will help you come up with your digital product strategy and share best practices on how others are finding success. To book your call, just go to MiloTree.com, our homepage, scroll down, and you'll see a link to my calendar. And please remember, the one constant in building online businesses is change. So book your free call now. I'm excited to show you a whole new way to monetize.
Welcome to the Blogger Genius podcast, brought to you by MiloTree. Here's your host, Jillian Leslie.
Hello, welcome back to the show. I have a very timely episode for you today. I am interviewing Madison Wetherill. She is a food blogger. Her food blog is Joyfully Mad Kitchen, and she is also a web designer and podcaster at Grace and Vine Studios, focusing on food blogs. Now, this episode is relevant for any kind of niche blogger because we are talking about how to stand out and have success today. And a lot of this has to do with being very specific in your niche, diversifying your traffic sources, your income sources, and asking yourself, why does my content matter to somebody? So therefore, it's really about setting yourself up as an authority, or your EEAT, which comes directly from Google. How do you show your experience, your expertise, your authority, and your trust today? Because this is what Google is looking for. We get into all of these topics and more. I think you're going to really like this episode. So without further delay, here is my interview with Madison Wetherill. Madison, welcome to the Blogger Genius podcast.
Thank you, Jillian. I'm so excited to be here.
You are a food blogging, I'm going to say expert, and you create the actual food blogs for people. In addition, you're a food blogger. So will you share your entrepreneurial journey, like how you got started and where you are today?
Absolutely. It is very interesting. I often get this strange look when I tell people what I do, not only because it's in the entrepreneur online space, which is very foreign to a lot of people, but they're like, you design websites for food bloggers, and there's just all these questions that come from it. But if I go back about 9 years now, I was in a corporate career, I studied graphic design in college. And when I got out, got a corporate career, I lived in a very small town, and it was basically we designed boxes, like shipping boxes, but also the little end caps that you see in Walmart and stuff like that. And very quickly I realized that was not the type of design work that I really wanted to do. And I actually found out I was pregnant with my oldest son, and then a week later lost that job. And so there was this moment of what am I going to do? I knew that I wanted to get out of corporate after just a few, I think it had been about 2 years that I was in that job. And I knew I wanted the flexibility to be able to stay home with my kids if I wanted to. And so I thought, well, I'm kind of being handed this opportunity to try my hand at entrepreneurship and see where it goes. And I had already started a blog at that point, and I had already started doing logo designs and random things on Etsy. And so I said, okay, well, let's just see what happens in the next 9 months as I kind of prepare for this first baby. Let's see what I can do if I actually put my mind to creating a business. And there's been a lot of bumps and, bruises along the way, but I cannot imagine my life in any different way. And I can't imagine doing anything different with my time. And the food blogging and web design thing kind of just happened because I stumbled into both of those things. And then all of a sudden had people in the food blogging space that I knew from my blog being like, oh, can you design this for me? Can you design this for me? And it kind of morphed from there.
What I think is super interesting, and this is talked about a lot in the blogger space is finding your niche, finding your lane. And it's so funny when I interview food bloggers, I find the ones who are the most successful are the ones who have super niched down. Like I've never, I can't say that I've never, but for the most part, I find that more people could niche down rather than they're too niche down. What's funny about your story is that you create websites for people, but not just any kind of people, food bloggers. So within that space, you've niched down. And what it sounds like is you found your people know who you are, they know what to expect from you. You just have to be an expert in food blogging website design, and you've got a business. So you're not building websites for the mom and pop shop down the street and then for some entrepreneur selling whatever. Like, you just go, this is my expertise, this is my lane, and you've been able, as you know, to grow a successful business. So for anybody listening who's like, I don't know about this niching down thing, you are the perfect example.
Yeah. And it's funny that you say that because this is a conversation that I have with clients all the time because people are so afraid to niche down to the point of pushing out other potential opportunities. And what's funny is every single time that somebody does that and they take that risk, I don't even think it's a risk, but it feels like a risk, right? Like it feels scary and it feels like, well, what if I don't, what if it's not successful enough if I put myself in a box? But every single time people experience exactly what you just described, where they are more successful with that niche because they push a people aside because they were clear on who it was that they served and how they served them. And I see this, of course, in my own business. And I will say too, something that people just need to know about niching down is you can always change it. And
Yes.
you can always say, well, I really want to do I want to do this one thing. I want to do sourdough. But if you want to do something outside of sourdough, like that's okay too. It doesn't have to be forever. It's not like, you never can talk about anything else or do anything else. But oftentimes when you're trying to grow and see success, you have to be in that one lane. And like you said, you have to become the expert in that lane for other people to trust you, because the flip side of that is if you talk about everything, nobody's going to remember you for anything specific and you're just, going to get forgotten.
In fact, I think about it this way. Is there a group of people out there? And remember, it doesn't have to be like, it can be a small niche because the world is really big. But are there people who, when you tell them what you offer, are right there raising their hand, going, that's for me. You're talking to me. And I was on a call today with a woman who helps people with pain. And that's a big topic. And as we were talking, I kept saying, well, who is it for? Like, pain is like everybody has pain. So, but if you say, I do pain management for athletes, and I do, pain management for college athletes, or whatever, all of a sudden now that college athlete who's in pain is going to raise his or her hand and go, me, versus just like pain. So that's what I say is use that as a test. Is there a group of people who would be excited to raise their hand for you because of what you offer?
Absolutely. And I think people are just afraid to step into that because there's so much unknown about, what else there is out there. And I also think it partially is, within your own circle of people, there might be a really, really small pocket of those people like you just described, but you forget that those people know other people who are like them. And so all of a sudden, you've taken your little small pocket of people and they will start to refer you to other people and tell people. I remember I had a client who specifically did Whole30 recipes, and I had a friend who was telling me, oh, I'm starting my first Whole30. Instantly, I knew who to tell her to go check out because it was like so clear. But if it had just been like, oh, I'm trying this diet and I don't really know, like she wasn't clear on what she wanted, I couldn't have given her that, that resource. So like you were
Absolutely.
saying, you have to get to the point where it's like so easy for someone to say, oh, you're interested, or oh, you're struggling with pain and you're a college athlete. Like, great, I know exactly who to send you to. And
Yes.
that's when you like find your, your lane
And
and like the golden ticket.
And it could be that nobody, like college athletes, doesn't work for her. Okay, well, what other sliver of people could you find that you could speak to? ADHD people? Like, who knows? Like, what is it? Who else is in pain? And where do you start to see traction? It's funny because for MiloTree cart, food bloggers love MiloTree cart, which is really funny because you think, oh no, food bloggers mostly make their money via traffic. And so, but what we have found is food bloggers want to start selling stuff, and food bloggers talk to other food bloggers. So it just so happens that because there are a lot of food bloggers in my audience and I have guests on who talk about food blog, like it all kind of starts to come together. Do I think that bros selling who knows what could benefit? Sure. But it's like, where are you getting traction? How do you lean into that? So let's talk about food bloggers today, because as I said, a lot of my audience are food bloggers. And there's, from what I gather, there's a level of nervousness, I'm going to call it, in this space because food blogging got very, what am I going to say, optimized. You knew how you, okay, so you niche down, you have a fast site, which I'm sure, Madison, you designed for people that's performative, like very optimized. You say, hey, here you use these tools. You find the low competition keywords. You start cranking out blog posts. Here's exactly how you structure your post. Blah blah blah, and all of a sudden you could start ranking in Google. Now things are starting to shift. Third-party cookies, which is how advertisers track you around the internet, are changing. Google is changing. So I feel like during the pandemic, everyone was home, everyone was cooking. Now people might not be, and it's hard, everybody was doing sourdough starter. Now I feel like things are a little less secure. I could be wrong. Tell me what you are seeing in terms of state of the world in food blogging.
For sure. And you're totally right. There is a little bit of like this panic, this uncertainty. But at the end of the day, before I kind of go into like what I've seen, I really think we have to remember that as entrepreneurs, as bloggers, we have to be resilient and we have to be adaptable. And if you can, continue to focus on those two things, you're going to be fine. However, with that being said, I think part of the reason there's kind of this fear and panic is because there is so much uncertainty. And, you had described a couple of the things that are leading to us kind of not knowing what the future of blogging is going to look like. But something that I've been telling people in conversations recently is, these are ad networks, Google itself, like they are in the business of making money. So while it might look different in 6 months or a year or in 10 years, like it's hard to even think that far ahead because it feels like blogging is so brand new, but blogging has already been around for 10, 20, 25 years. So going forward, things might look different, but our livelihood and our ability to make money through food blogs is just as important to the ad networks and to Google as their own bottom line because they're all connected, right? Like they're all working together. And so that's my first perspective is that yes, things are changing, but at the end of the day, everybody wants to make money through advertising and through blog content. And so things are going to work out, that's just a positive way to look at it, right? Another huge shift that I'm seeing that comes a lot from both these changes to potential, the monetization stream of ad revenue, but also with AI being on the scene is I'm really seeing this shift back towards personal branding. And, I've had so many conversations with clients over the years who are kind of like behind the scenes. They didn't want to be, in front of their audience. They didn't even want like a profile picture on their website. And now we're seeing this really big push that you have to make sure it's clear who you are and who's behind the content. And I'm loving this shift, honestly, because I think it's a one way that you can really foolproof and, just make sure that you're not going to lose everything overnight. The more that you can have connections with your audience, that they can know who you are, they can know what your niche is, the more, no matter what happens, you're still going to be able to rely on that group of people who are your biggest and truest fans. So that's definitely a huge shift that I'm seeing, but I think it's honestly, I think it's for the better for the longer haul of, what our industry does. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. In fact, I agree with you completely. Back, for us OG bloggers, it was literally like wake up in the morning and be like, what do I want to write about and what recipe and what did I make last night for dinner? And I'm going to go off into some tangent story about my kids and who knows what. And then it got to the place of like, whoa, this is a business and people don't really care about you and your kids. And you're just kind of like randomly talking about stuff like, no, 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 you need to get to the recipe. You need to say why this is useful. You need to have that recipe card. And now I agree with you. It becomes a little bit more of, well, who is this person who created this recipe? And the truth is, I still might not totally care about your kids, no offense. But I mean, I know, I'm sure they're lovely. But now it could be, hey, I have a kid who's got certain allergies, and this is his favorite mac and cheese recipe. And so if you have a kid, like my kid, like if I can relate to you as a human and go, hey, I see you. And here's why this is relevant for you. I think that's a superpower. And in fact, I just posted a reel today about how do you compete against AI, and it's all about I wrote, show up as a real person over and over, warts and all. And I think that is really powerful. If you're the person with the no makeup on that morning and you show up and are like, hey, I'm okay showing up like this, or share, again, you don't want to share like deep stuff. I would say, like, especially anything like that you're going through, but any way that people can relate to you, I think is where the superpower comes from today.
Right. And I totally agree. And I think that is really what is going to, people have been saying this too, right? Like, what's the one thing that AI can't do? It can't be human. So the more you add in that human factor, whether it's, I'm just a real person behind the camera, or it's the, pictures, like the photos for your blog that have your hands in it. Like, it's such a simple thing, but that can make it feel so much more real. And what's really interesting, we live in kind of our own little bubble being in this space because we are hyper aware of all of these changes and things that are happening in our industry. Most of our audience is not. They are not fearful of AI. I mean, maybe they've heard about it, maybe, but like most people haven't used ChatGPT to write a recipe for them. They don't even know, like, there's been a lot of comments talking about, those people will see in a Facebook group an AI generated image that as food bloggers, we're like, that is so fake. But as, the regular people out there who are not food bloggers, they think it's real. So all that to say, like, we are kind of living in a bubble where we find, we think about these things all day long because they impact our business. But just know that your audience is still a little bit protected from that. And that's a good thing because I think we have a longer runway to protect our businesses, to get ahead of this trend before it's like, the train is kind of off the tracks. But I think that shift towards just being human again and finding this balance between like, the original blogging where it was all about the story to now where it's like nobody cares about the story, like find the balance that works for you and for your audience. And that's really where you're going to find success going forward, I think.
Absolutely. So, given that you optimize food blogs, if you were to just give a top line assessment of, say, the 3 or 5 things you need to make sure your blog does, like nuts and bolts, what would you say they are?
Yeah, it's funny because when I think back, we used to say, like, make sure you have a good theme, make sure your site is fast. And those things are really important. But I think those are like, okay, yeah, we got that. We're doing those things. So I think what people really want to know is like, what's the next phase of like, how do I optimize my website? And I think one thing that we kind of just touched on is really optimizing your website for EEAT, which is, a term that we've all heard, but basically EEAT is just, can you be trusted as the person
Wait, can you
behind this
share what
recipe?
it stands for?
Yes, I should have pulled this up so I would have it.
I know. That's why I punted that to you. It's like
Let me,
experience.
hopefully you'll cut this part out.
I will.
Actually, we have an entire blog post that I can share a link to if you want, that will really go like super not high level, but really go in deep about what it is. But what it stands for is experience, expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. So if you kind of boil that down, really, it's like, can I trust that what I'm reading is from somebody who knows what they're talking about, who has experience, and can be trusted? And so when you think about optimizing your website for EEAT, the first thing really is making sure, like I said, you have a picture of you. Like, who is this person behind the website? Because anyone or anything, even like AI, can create a website, but not every person, is going to put their face on there. So the moment you have a picture of yourself, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to hire a professional photographer. Like iPhones take amazing photos these days. Take a good quality lighting and professional looking photo and put it on your website. The second part of that is making sure that you're linking to your about page. This is one of the like signals for Google of authoritativeness and trustworthiness. That about page should also be really well done and professional. I used to joke that about pages used to be like somebody's resume, and it shouldn't quite be that, but it also shouldn't quite be all about the story either. But really, your about page should paint you as an expert in whatever niche you've decided. So if you are doing sourdough, like how long have you been doing sourdough? Did you just start this week, or have you been using your same sourdough starter for 25 years? If you are sharing healthy recipes, is it because you had a chronic illness that, cooking healthy helped you to overcome? There's a lot of different ways to kind of tie your story into your expertise, and that's where it becomes relevant. And yeah, so linking to that about page and making sure that it's really well done. There's three main places to link to the about page. One is your homepage, one is on your sidebar, and then the third is within your recipe card. This is actually a really big one because when that recipe card links directly to the about page, that's just a huge linking signal for Google to understand kind of how everything fits together. And again, why you are an authority.
I want to take a short break to say that if you are looking to create your first digital product, I personally recommend you start with an ebook. And I have everything you need to create this. I have 13 ChatGPT AI prompts to use to create an ebook in under 3 hours. To grab this freebie, go to milotree.com/ebook prompts. That's milotree.com/ebook, EBOOK prompts, PROMPTS. Snag it today. What are you waiting for? And now back to the show. There's a theme here to our conversation, and that really is, who are you and why and how should I trust you? And
Exactly.
I would add that thing too of being human, but also recognize for your audience the what's in it for me piece, which is, again, what are they getting out of what you are creating?
Exactly. And that's why I said that the about page, like it used to be kind of this like, it's all about your resume and your experience. And there was no mention of like your audience. And then now I think it really has to be a balance of those two things because ironically, when someone goes to an about page, they don't really care about you. They're not wanting to learn about you as the creator. What they're really asking is like, how do I fit into this story? Is this website for me? And that's what the about page should answer. It should answer that question and it should give them something to relate to, whether that is as simple as like, I used to be X and now I am Y, and they can relate to that, or it's just like the real life. I'm a mom with 3 kids. I know how stressful dinner time is. So I make sure my recipes on my website are easy for you to get on the table in 10 minutes, whatever it is. But really capitalizing on that interest and that person has like a piqued interest when they go to your about page. So how can you connect those dots for them? And doing that is going to also benefit your site from an EEAT perspective.
That's great. In terms of the ways that food bloggers are monetizing right now, I'm assuming a lot of it, again, is ad revenue, putting ads on your site, being with Raptive or Mediavine, and that's always the goal. I see people who, let's say, just get into Mediavine and they go, Phew, okay, I'm into Mediavine, but then guess what? They can't necessarily buy that second house being in Mediavine. So they come to me and they go, okay, now I'm ready to start opening up, tapping into new income streams of digital products. What can I offer? Because I recognize now I've reached this goal, but it's not the end of the game. It's just kind of another step in my journey. So, where else are you seeing food bloggers monetize?
I love that you described it that way because I think that it's this weird thing where you have this goal to reach, monetization and you get there and you're like, I can't pay my bills with this. I can barely afford groceries with this. And so I think like you said, people are really shifting and it also is really beneficial for people who are not monetized through ads to start building these income streams. Some of the ones that I'm seeing people kind of flock to, so whether they're trendy or they're just seeing success with is I've seen a lot of people doing paid meal plans, and there's different apps that you can use for it, but it also is as simple as just kind of something that you're creating for people who like almost like a Patreon
Yeah,
type of
newsletter.
scenario
Do
where,
it in a
yeah.
newsletter. Absolutely.
Yeah, so meal plans seem to be really popular again, but just in a paid format and in a really intentional and curated format.
And by the way,
I
you
also
can set that
see,
up easily in MiloTree card. I've got a bunch of food bloggers who do that. So yeah, keep
yeah,
going.
yeah, I think another thing you kind of alluded to is like paid newsletters. So Substack has become really popular. Um, and even within other newsletter platforms, there's ways to monetize certain content. So if you want to have like kind of that locked content that someone has to pay to see, that's another thing. And then I think the last one, it's definitely not new at all, but I've just seen kind of a trend towards it is paid ebooks. So not just like the freebie, like here are my 5 best recipes, but it's really like a curated list of 30, 40 recipes in a digital format. It doesn't have to be a printed cookbook, but I'm seeing a lot of people kind of flock to that as well. Um, and those, none of those are like anything out of the norm of what you're already doing when you create content. It's just packaging it up in a unique way and in an accessible way because honestly, our audience does not love ads. So anytime you can give them our content without ads, I think people are really interested in that.
And the question that I get all the time is, why would anybody buy this if the content is already on my blog for free? And I say what they're buying is the ease because they don't know your blog like you do. They're not going into the search bar and searching for your top. How would they know what your top recipes are or like your foolproof desserts? You need to package that up as the foolproof desserts that I always joke will impress your mother in law and like sell that so that because I'm willing to pay 15 bucks for desserts that are going to knock it out of the park. Like that's what like so therefore if I trust you because I've seen your content and maybe I've seen you showing up in stories on Instagram and I go, okay, you will lead me on the right path, then you're selling your 15 best desserts that I can't screw up. Okay, like that's it. I go, I get what's in it for me. I get why trusting you is so important. And ultimately, then I look good. So for $15, it's like an insurance policy. I am willing to spend that. And that is what I have to keep telling food bloggers over and over again is you you have such a different perspective of your blog and your content than any of your visitors, people in your community. They're not paying attention like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And something else that you mentioned that made me think of this is goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning about your niche. Like if you are trying to package up 15 yummy recipes, like probably nobody's going to buy that. But if it's 15 foolproof desserts you can serve to your mother-in-law, like absolutely sign me up. Or if it's 15 snacks for after school for picky kids, like yes, please give that to me. I saw a recent ebook that was like 15 sourdough discard cookie recipes. And I'm like, yes, I want that because I can't develop that myself. So the more specific you get, and if you can solve a specific problem for your audience, I know you talk about this all the time, that's where you're going to see success. And, I think something we didn't mention when I was talking about, this trend is I think people are trying this method of having different income streams as another way of protecting their business as a whole, because it's not likely. I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, because I think you obviously have a lot more experience with this, but it's not like overnight you're going to switch and have 80% of your revenue coming from these income streams of digital products. However, if you do lose a big revenue stream like your ad revenue, all of a sudden now you still have something and you're not climbing up from nothing when that happens. And I also think then you're building that like true community of your closest audience members who are going to buy whatever it is that you sell. Like they're
That's
just gonna be
it.
like, here's my credit card, I'll take
That's
it.
it. I said this, I shared this in a recent podcast, and this is nothing new. This has been around for a long time. But if you think about it, if you have 1,000 true fans and each one spends $100 a year buying your products, you've just made $100,000. So this idea of one to many, which is very much like that ad model, I need thousands, millions of visitors in order to make money via ads. It's different when it comes to selling products and services because you're selling access in a weird way to your expertise, to you, but really your expertise. And that is valuable. I think we don't know how to charge for that. It feels uncomfortable. It feels easier to just put out free content and go, let the ad gods, give me money for this. I think it's harder to say, hey, this dessert is really going to impress your mother-in-law. Like I promise you, or I'll give you your money back. And then you tap into your own insecurities of like your mother-in-law. And like, that's so relatable. Like you immediately know the story just by me saying that. And by the way, I have like a really lovely mother-in-law, but like I still want to impress her. I still want her to think I'm like a good daughter-in-law and like a good mother. You know what I mean? So it's like, that's so like you're smiling because you totally get it. And so all of a sudden it becomes a story and it becomes a connection. So thinking about how do I find these 1,000 true fans, it's by honestly one by one loving on people. It's by saying, I'm a human and you're human, and the world's weird right now with AI, but let's connect and let's do what we've done for hundreds of thousands of years, which is need each other and rely on each other and be kind to each other. So that I feel we all crave. And if you can tap into that with vulnerability, not again, with authenticity, let's use that. I think that is your superpower. So with digital products, usually what you're looking for is you're looking for some traction. So maybe it becomes your ebook of recipes. And then it could be, who knows, like maybe you have some skill with sourdough and you go, hey, I'm going to do coaching for people who love sourdough and somehow can't get their starter working. Hey, get on a call with me. Or maybe you create a community of people who love sourdough recipes and you show up live once a month and bake something cool. And maybe you bake something together and you create community. And that's like where the money is. The money, while yes, ebook sales are great and you can make them while you're sleeping, the money really is bringing people together. So I would say put that in the back of your mind. It shifts the way you think about your food blog or your any kind of blog. Because again, as you were saying, it's like I'm hiding behind my blog. You don't really have to know me. And now it's like, oh no, let's talk. Let's connect. So that's just the thing that I continue to see that I think is, as a person who likes people, it makes me happy when, like, I love my podcast because I get to connect with you. And so I just think that when I can help somebody create a community or solve problems for other people, like, what else are we here for? That's just my personal perspective.
I agree. And I think that's something that food bloggers in particular struggle with or have struggled with in the past is recognizing that what you're creating and what you're providing is not just a recipe, that there's some reason that that recipe matters. And it's not your story necessarily. It's not because it's your grandmother's recipe, but it's because it's the recipe you make when you have friends coming over for the first time and you're nervous and you want a recipe that's trusted, or when you have soccer practice and you want your kids to have a healthy dinner before they're on the go. It's those struggles that you are not the only person who has those struggles. There's hundreds, if not thousands, of people in your audience who also have that struggle. And it just becomes about being clear with people when they come to your site for the very first time. This is something I talk about a lot where, someone comes to your website for a random post and it's from Google, they don't know you, or it's from Pinterest, they don't know you. How are you connecting those dots for them? How are you making it really clear what that struggle is that you solve and making it like just so easy for them to be like raising their hand saying like, absolutely, I want to be a part of what you're doing because I relate to that and I struggle with that too. And so it's so interesting how like that's the same thing for digital products. It's the same thing for like when niche down and you create a brand on your website. It's the same thing I'm seeing popular on Instagram. Like you have all of these like Instagram accounts. Someone the other day told me about one that was meal planning for shift workers, like
Mm.
nurses, doctors, like that type of thing.
Mhm.
Like that is so specific, but it's so relevant to those people who it fits, right? Like it doesn't apply to me at all, so I'm not going to go follow that account. But that's what we're trying to do when we create these niches and these brands is make it so easy for someone to say yes or no. And that puts, like you said, that puts us into a vulnerable position because we just want everyone to be able to love our recipes. And I'm sure all of your recipes are lovely and they're delicious and amazing, but they're not for everybody. And the faster you can get to being okay with that and being just really clear about that, I think the faster you're going to see success in all of these different areas that are, a part of your food blog business.
I couldn't agree more. So to wrap up, what are tools? Let's say your 5 favorite tools for you, for other food bloggers that you know. What are people using?
That's a really good question because honestly, there are just so many tools out there. I, when it comes to like what I use for my own food blog, when it comes to SEO, I really love Ahrefs. That is kind of my preferred keyword research tool. I've used SEMrush before, but Ahrefs just works for my brain. And my team over there, we use a combination of Ahrefs and Rank IQ for our SEO and keyword research. I really also love Airtable,
Mm.
which if people haven't used Airtable, it's kind of like a project management tool and like Google Sheets or Excel like got together and made it pretty. That's kind of the way that it works. It's a database tool, but it just gives you tons of different options and ways to customize the way you look at information. So that's been really helpful when I do things like a content audit on my site or even when I'm working on like reorganizing my categories for a website redesign. Like it's just a way to visualize data. Um, those are three. Let me
Yeah.
see. I'll give a little shout out to kind of the way that we work with clients right now. So our like signature package that we're doing with clients is our crafted website, which is kind of like a semi-custom way of working with clients. And we are utilizing the Cadence framework. So that's a tool that I am loving for not just us, but also for our clients because it gives food bloggers a really great way to customize their blog content. So it uses a bunch of different blocks that you can, customize and design differently for mobile versus desktop and add colors and things like that. And so I think when we talk about standing out, that's one way that you can literally have your content visually stand out and have people get people to pay attention.
And wait, I just want to pause for a second for people that don't know. You can have a traditional theme for your WordPress site, but Cadence are literal blocks that you can then almost put together like Legos on your WordPress blog to create custom features. Like there might be a block for testimonials or a block for, I don't know, like you would know better than me, but like, here's where I want my photos to be, or here's where I want this to be. And you're kind of just that way. You're right. It's not like every food blog is going to look the same because there are certain themes that lots of food bloggers like, but then you end up with a lot of sites that look very similar. That could be a positive or a negative. I can see it through both sides of that argument. But if you're right, if you want some customization, Cadence is a good way to go because it doesn't slow your site down and it's like optimized for WordPress. So think of it as
Yeah.
Legos.
Yeah, exactly. Cadence is a couple of different things. It is a theme itself, or it's a framework technically. So, like Genesis was kind of the framework that everybody used the last 10 years. Cadence is kind of newer and has a lot of features built into it. But Cadence Blocks is actually like a plugin you could get with the Feast theme or with another theme, more than likely. And you'd be able to use some of those features. So it's both a
Okay.
theme and it's blocks, but it provides so many customization options and without having to know like a lot of coding because most food bloggers don't have time to learn coding, nor should they. Um, So yeah, that's another like huge tool that we use constantly in my business, in my food blog, and in Grace and Vine. And then a fifth tool, I'm trying to think of
Wait,
one.
I have two ready that
Okay.
everybody should be using: ChatGPT and Canva.
Yes, both of those are things that we use. And I'll actually share from a chat GPT perspective, something that I have learned to use it for, because I know it's kind of like a controversial thing. Like, do you use it to create recipes or do you use it for whatever? I really like to use it for tedious things, like projects that would take a lot of brain power for me. For example, if I like wrote down all of my recipe ingredients for something, but I didn't write down the actual step by step how to do it, I'll throw it into ChatGPT and say, please write me a recipe for banana muffins using these recipes, these ingredients. Usually I have to go back and forth a little bit with it because it'll put like a bunch of headings and a bunch of adjectives. And I'm like, no, please make it just simple for me. But that's like a really simple way that saves me time. Or sometimes it's things like converting fractions. So if I'm using, in my recipe card, like 1/4 cup, I actually want the 1/4 symbol, but I might have like 10 ingredients that need that. And so you can copy and paste that and ask it to do that. And then the third would be like if I have something that's in all caps and I want it to write it in regular sentence case, I can have it do that for me. So I like to use ChatGPT for those things rather than necessarily like creating content for me. It's just like taking the admin, like brainless kind of things out of my workflow. And it's just so much faster than me having to, sit there and type a couple paragraphs that are in all caps or something like that.
Absolutely. And in fact, you're not the first food blogger. You're actually the third food blogger who has
Oh,
shared
wow.
that they put in the ingredients and they say, write the recipe steps. So that's interesting that you're using it for that. I have talked to some food bloggers who have said, hey, ChatGPT, create a banana muffin for me, and then went to then cook the banana muffin recipe, like create this recipe for banana muffins, and then they will go cook it and see, or bake it and see if it's good. And I think that's kind of an interesting use of ChatGPT as well, to say like, how good is it? And then you can report back on, hey, is this worth doing? I just think that's like a way to kind of own it and put your spin on chat. Like you could have a whole blog of like, are chat GPT recipes good, any good? And you create the recipe in chat GPT and then go bake it or go cook it and see what happens. So like you can be creative with it. And I know there are those people who feel like they need to be like that they could eat. Or here's one: you could create a blog, a blog that says, I don't use chat GPT for these recipes, or I only, or disclosing, here's where I use chat GPT. I use chat GPT to write the steps, but otherwise there is no chat GPT in this recipe. I don't know. I think there'll be interesting ways to use it as a food blogger, instead of this like on off perspective of like, no, 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 I can't use it in my recipe development, or all I'm doing is creating fake recipes with ChatGPT and pretending that I've made the recipe and then my fake photos. And so it'll be really interesting to see how this shakes out.
Yeah, and I think people should just not necessarily be afraid of using it for anything. But yeah, like you were saying, if you're gonna ask it to write a recipe, make sure you test it. Like I've done that before, and it took me 3 or 4 times of tweaking things and testing it to get it right, which sometimes is worth it. Like sometimes it might have taken me 10 tries on my own. But using it for like some of those tedious things that just speed up your workflow, or sometimes it's like, putting in everybody's schedule and saying, find a common time that we can meet. Like there's a lot of ways to use like the computer aspect of it without feeling like you're, selling your soul to AI because you're using it to like write content for your whole blog and that type of thing.
Absolutely. Okay, Madison, this has been so enlightening. I've really enjoyed our conversation. If people want to reach out to you, to see what you do, to find your food blog, where should they go?
For sure. Yeah, I would love to continue this conversation with anyone who, is really like thinking about how do I step out and, stand out in the sea of food bloggers in this AI world? Like, how do I kind of carve that niche for myself? That's definitely something that we help our clients with when we work on branding with them. But you can always come chat with me over on Instagram at Grace and Vine. I also have my podcast, which Jillian's going to be a guest on, that's called the Vine Podcast. So I talk about things like this and things like EEAT and designing your website to stand out and things like that over on that show. But yeah, if you're interested in just kind of learning about how we work with clients or how we might be able to support you, you can head over to our website, graceandvinestudios.com, and just look at the different ways that we work with clients and support food bloggers in general.
Awesome. Well, I just have to say, Madison, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I hope you guys like this episode. For me, my biggest takeaway is to think about how your visitor or customer fits into the story of your content. It's no longer about just, I find low competition keywords, I write blog posts that feature all of these keywords, I put it out for Google, I rank for it, I get traffic, I get money. Now it's about you and your vibe and your expertise and your connection to your audience. This is also about finding new ways to monetize. If you are a food blogger and you are not selling your best recipes in an ebook to your audience, you should start. Not just because it's a way to turn on a new income stream, it's also a way to start testing what your audience wants from you. This is how you find gold. If you want to get on a free 20-minute call with me to talk about this, just go to MiloTree.com and you'll see my calendar to sign up for a time. If you're ready to start, remember with MiloTree card, you can be selling your ebook, any kind of digital product in under 5 minutes. We offer a 30-day, no questions asked, money back guarantee. We are selling it right now for a lifetime deal of $349. We also have a 3-month payment plan. Most people make this all back after their first product. And you buy it once and you own it forever. So go check that out at MiloTree.com. Hey, if you're liking these episodes, please share them with a friend. This is how I get great guests. And I will see you again next week with another great guest.